What's up, Met fans? Welcome back to a breaking news show as the Los Angeles Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million. Deferrals, opt-outs, and the rich get richer yet again. I mean, do we just give him the World Series championship? Just hand it to him? No season? Might as well start the strike now. Start it. Let's negotiate the CBA right now. Why wait for a year? Why wait for a year? And look at that, Met fans. He did not take the long-term deal. I told you there was something with Toronto that just didn't sit well with me. And the guy gets $60 million a year. Of course, with deferrals and stuff like that. But I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say. I was so sure that he was going to go to Toronto that I wouldn't have been that upset with him taking a long-term deal. But I'm even more upset he took the short-term deal. And the Mets lose out on another potential high-profile player they could have had. Now, again, I don't know what went wrong. Right? The Mets were there. They had a great offer, short-term offer. And he chose the Dodgers. So I guess he didn't care about living in Tampa. Because now he's going to Arizona for spring training. And is on the West Coast. Playing with the Dodgers. So, listen. It is what it is at this point, guys. There's nothing else I can say. Is that he didn't take the long-term deal. And Blue Jay fans should be more pissed than Met fans because, again, you know, the Mets, again, he has opt-outs in year 2 and 3 of this contract for the Dodgers. It's going to be more and more interesting to see if what the Mets contract completely was. You know, we know that they probably weren't going to do an opt-out after year 1 because of the draft pick compensation. But were they only going to give one opt-out? Were they willing to go a 5th year? Or were they willing to go a couple $1 million more? But at the end of the day, it does not matter because the Dodgers once again swoop in, slap the Mets in the face, bitch slapped them. They didn't even just slap, they bitch slapped them. And took another potential guy that they could have had on this team in the same offseason. So, damn. I tell you. And I don't want to hear anybody say overpaid bum because the Mets were willing to pay $50 million a year for 4 years. Right? They were willing to do it. So, regardless if the Mets would have got him or not, it's an overpay. We all know that. And now we're stuck holding the bag once again. The New York Mets still got a tremendous amount of holes in their outfield. And I don't want to hear anybody say, oh, well, what about the prospects? Because clearly, David Stearns was, I guess, somewhat willing to be very much in the mix and be a finalist for Kyle Tucker. So you can't be in that deep with Kyle Tucker and then bring up the prospects once again, which he will do because he always does it. And now Steve Cohen found himself on X and was talking about the Pope and smoke and all that nonsense. And, you know, looking like a fool on social media again. But here's what we know. Steve Cohen David Stearns have failed yet again to bring another player in here that is a really good player that the Mets failed to get, and now they'll be pivoting to somebody else. They're probably not going to go get Cody Bellinger. Maybe they make a trade for Luis Robert, Jared Duran, God knows who else. Duran would be fine. That would be a good move. But this is what is happening right now with the New York Mets. The Mets aren't a good enough destination for players. And look, even the Dodgers, who are not desperate for anybody, are still overpaying. What is their payroll? $413 million? $415 million? And that's with deferments? This is insane. The Dodgers did not need Kyle Tucker, but they still get it. No, Mike, it's not about Stearns' fault, Cohen's fault. Look, they didn't get the guy. They lost. But the fact of the matter is, why do they keep on losing out on players? That's the question we have to ask. Why do you have to lose out on players? Why? Like, is it the situation that we've been hearing for a couple of years now with the clubhouse? Is it just New York? Right? Because LA has all the advantage, right? They've been winning. The weather's great. You got spring training in Arizona, which, I mean, Florida's fine. But what is it? What is it about the New York Mets? And again, I don't even want to talk about Toronto because I said this for a while. We've been seeing this the last couple of seasons. Players don't want to go to Toronto. They just don't. It is what it is. Like, that's a fact. Like, the Toronto Blue Jays overpaid for Dylan Cease to go to Toronto. Vladimir Guerrero was already a Blue Jay, so it was easy for them to extend him. A lot of players don't want to go to Toronto. But it's not about them going to Toronto. I want to know why they didn't go to the New York Mets. They were clearly involved. They were clearly to go $50 million. Maybe they weren't willing to go more than that. I don't know. I guess we'll find out more details to come. So, I don't know. It's frustrating, right? You know, I had all this crazy energy, and I'm just like, you know, the Mets didn't. Here, look, he took the short-term deal, so the Mets were clearly number 2 behind the Mets because, again, the long-term deal did not mean anything to Kyle Tucker. So the Mets were right, so to speak, on the short-term deal that he was willing to stay in the States for a shorter-term deal. That was how much he didn't want to go to Toronto. So Blue Jay fans should be pissed more than Met fans because the Mets were clearly the runners-up yet again. But hasn't this been the story since Steve Cohen took over, since David Stearns has taken over, that they come up a day late and a dollar short? Right? They dip their toes in the water. They never jump in. Not saying that Kyle Tucker's worth $60 million or even $50 million for that matter. But guess what? The Dodgers wanted him and they got him. That's it. Because here's what's going to happen. They're going to overpay for somebody, either with prospects or money. So if they do pivot to Bellinger, they're at least giving him 5 years, $150 to $160 million. That's not an overpay for Cody Bellinger. Getting Jared Duran, are they going to pay multiple prospects? Probably an overpay to get Duran. So anybody who didn't want to overpay for Tucker, what do you think is going to happen when they pivot to get an outfielder? They're going to overpay. Right? That is what's going to happen. It's crazy to think that now they're going to pivot because Steve Cohen, you know, popped up on X, and you know he's pissed now. You know he's pissed. And again, does anybody believe now that Steve Cohen wasn't all in those negotiations? And look, Steve Cohen failed. He didn't do his job. He didn't finish the deal, right? He went into those negotiations trying to finish the deal. Now again, it's probably the New York, it's probably the Mets most likely. But the Mets aren't a destination. They aren't a favorable destination for players. That's a fact. That has to change. That has to change. Like, yeah, I agree, Chris. 4 years, $220 million. It's not a bad offer. It's a great offer. Right? What is it? $55 million? Look, they kept going, right? Why didn't they go to the extra $20 million or $40 million or $20 million? I don't know. Right? I mean, clearly the Mets were in it to the end, right? The Blue Jays were clearly third place. Why didn't they go to the extra $40 million? I guess he was worth $55 million, but not $60 million, right? More of a trend here, right? Diaz took $69 million, didn't take $66 million. So a few $1 million made the difference in going to the Dodgers or the Mets. And the Dodgers also had to overpay to land him. Like, it's like the Dodgers, he went to the Dodgers for less money. So the $20 million more than the Mets offered was enough for Kyle Tucker to go. But it was enough, $260, right? So it is what it is. It's like, you can't really, I don't know, man. You know, again, the Mets lost out on $20 million. Again, it's peanuts to what they offered. You know, yeah, and you know, CP's on the in the chat right now. Yeah, I mean, we didn't believe it either, right? I was never confident that he was coming to the Mets. I was not confident, but they missed out on a few $1 million a year, right? So what are they going to do now? Because that's the answer. And if you're just tuning in, the Dodgers, the rich get richer. The Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker to a 4 years, $240 million deal. They got multiple opt-outs in the second and third year, and there's a lot of deferrals. Right? How that breaks down, we'll see that later, but nobody else cares at this point. It's just a matter of now what do the Mets do? Where do they pivot to? Because pretty good chance they're clearly wanted an outfielder badly. 4 years, $220 million they offered. They clearly wanted them. They didn't get them. Now, where do they pivot to? Is it Cody Bellinger? Is it Luis Robert? Is it Jared Durant? That is the only three guys that they should go after, to be quite honest with you. Right? Now it's an overpay for Cody Bellinger if you go after him. That's a fact. We know that it's an overpay. 100% overpay. Because right now, it's what the Yankees offer is. And if you wanted to give Bellinger that much money in that many years, then you should have started and ended with Cody Bellinger. You shouldn't even worried about Kyle Tucker. Because now, again, here's the other thing. This is what I don't think a lot of people understand. But every one of these players, now, mostly Cody Bellinger because he's the next top free agent outfielder. Cody Bellinger is going to look at the Mets offer for Kyle Tucker. Yes, Kyle Tucker is better than Cody Bellinger, but you know these players don't think this. They believe that they're better than everybody else. They deserve all this money. What do you think Scott Boras and Cody Bellinger is going to say to the New York Mets? Is that guy's worth $52 to $53 million a year? We want more than this. We want more than what the Yankees offered. We want $5 more million more each year. Are the Mets going to do it for Cody Bellinger? Or is David Stearns actually going to trade prospects, legitimate prospects, to land a very good center fielder or outfielder in Jared Durant. Is that a possibility? I think it should be, right? We talked about this during the deadline last year. We talked about it in the offseason a little bit where Jared Durant could be a possibility on the trade market. Twist, yeah, Bellinger is older. But again, when you lose out on the guy you wanted, and I said this in the Kyle Tucker Watch show, I said it. When you lose out on a player that you really wanted, clearly the Mets wanted Tucker. Now you're going to be a little bit more desperate to land somebody else. Especially you got Steve Cohen found his X account and wrote some stuff and tweeted some stuff out there. So the owner was clearly talking about this. So he's pissed. He don't put himself out there, especially when it comes to a player that's making a decision. And what, again, is he just going to go into the back burner? Is he just going to say, all right, David, take over now? That's what he's going to do? Okay, great. Let David Stearns do what he got to do. But what is it? What is the pivot move? What are you going to sign, Harrison Bader again? You're going to sign somebody else that's not that good? Or are you going to get the next best player? Because you know what teams do, which the Mets seemingly don't do, even though, let's be fair. I'll be fair with David Stearns. Listen up, Met fans who think that I just kill him. Even though Edwin Diaz didn't come off the board yet, he signed Devin Williams, which was the next best closer on the market. But Edwin Diaz was still there. This is a different situation. The best guy on the market is off the board that you truly wanted. Usually, when you don't get the best player on the market, you go get the second best player on the market. That's how it works. That's Cody Bellinger. Bellinger is better than Luis Robert, better than Harrison Bader, better than most guys. Maybe Jared Durant is better, maybe, but it's kind of close between Bellinger and Durant, right? It's just a matter of what are they going to do now? Because this is getting annoying. It really is. But I think there's two issues, right? The Mets are right there contract-wise. So am I going to kill him on the contract, right? Why didn't they go $5 million more or $20 million more total contract? I don't know. If you're already willing to give 50, I mean, $10 million each year is going to break the bank. But again, they were right there. Again, day late, dollar short. That is the motto of the New York Mets for the last couple of seasons. That has been the problem. They keep on coming up just short, right? They lost Diaz because they came up just short. I don't think they screwed up this negotiations with Kyle Tucker. They were clearly in on him. Regardless of who was in the room, they were right there. Now, is it possible Kyle Tucker took the Mets offer to the Dodgers and it's a similar Diaz situation where they says, okay, yeah, we'll give you $260 or $240. Okay. $5 million more per year? Well, HFL, guess what? $10 million in baseball is chump change. Because there's average players getting an average value per year is $15 million. There's guys that are barely average players getting $15 million a year. So $10 million is chump change. Bad pitchers with 4 or 5 ERAs are going to get over $10 million a year. Like, that's what baseball is. $10 million is chump change in baseball. Not in life, not what me and you see. But in baseball terms, $10 million is not a lot of money. Or $20 million is not a lot in the spectrum of it's an extra $5 to $10 million per year. That's nothing. $5 million is a bench player in baseball now. So it's not a lot more money in baseball sense. In our lives, it's a hell of a lot of money. But in baseball sense, it's not. So again, I know people wanted me to go crazy, but we all knew that it never felt like Tucker was coming to the Mets, right? I mean, I think we all just assumed, or at least had that thought in our mind, that Tucker was going to take the long-term deal from the Toronto Blue Jays. But the Dodgers are lingering. We said that, right? During the show earlier today. They're going to linger. They're going to linger in this case, right? They were never the sleeper team. They were never the mystery team. They were involved. But what did they do? And what have the Dodgers done great at for years now? They hovered. They waited until they probably felt like the Mets or the Blue Jays made their best offer. But I don't even think it had to be with the Blue Jays. I don't think the Dodgers cared about the Blue Jays. They cared about the Mets offer. The Dodgers waited for the biggest possible deal that they thought he can get with a short-term deal, and they doubled down. And they've been doing that time and time again. And again, Andrew Freeman is a badass, right? It's not like Steve Cohen's broke. And I'm not saying that a team should go $400 million in a payroll. But you know what? The Dodgers just keep doing it. They just keep going. It's crazy. And by no means am I saying that the Mets need to spend $400 million. Not saying that at all. But again, take this into perspective. The Mets lost out on Tucker for $20 million overall contract. Because I think we're going to find out that the Mets did the same opt-outs. I think it was only $20 million difference. Now, maybe it's different, but what I'm thinking... It's all right, CP. So for $20 million difference, again, we don't know all the details yet. I haven't looked at my phone in a little bit. So maybe somebody tweeted it out about the exact offer for the New York Mets, not the money in the years, but was there multiple opt-outs? Because if there's multiple opt-outs and it's similar opt-outs to the Dodgers, then he went there for $20 million more. And you have to beg the question, why didn't the Mets, who were already willing to give $50 million a year, give an extra $5 million each year? Again, $5 million is chump change in baseball. Steve Cohen spits on that. So why did they go $5 million per year more? Why is that? Because again, you lost out on a player. It happened again. You were very much in on Diaz, but you left room for negotiations with somebody else, and he booked it. You were in on Kyle Tucker. You were right there, but maybe you left enough room. And again, we don't know if Tucker took the Mets deal and went to the Dodgers and say, hey, listen, improve this number, and I'm signing here. George, I understand that. $60 million is not chump change, but the Mets were already at $50 million. Right? They were already at $50 million. Maybe they just said, screw it. We're not going $60 million. Maybe they had a chance to counteroffer. And, if they didn't think that, if they thought $50 million was good enough, which I think it was, again, it's an overpay for sure. The Mets are willing to overpay grossly on this deal. So it's not like they lowballed them or shortchanged them and gave him a lowball offer. That wasn't the case. They gave him a hell of an offer short term. But was the extra $20 million, because again, there's some reports saying that the Mets were willing to go to $220. So again, if that's the case, and they were willing to go $55 million per year, we're talking about another 5 years per $5 million per year. Why weren't they willing to do it? Now again, I get that they already went above and beyond. They were willing to well overpay for Kyle Tucker. But they did lose out on Kyle Tucker. Like, Met fans shouldn't be happy about this. There's too many Met fans that say, oh, he wasn't worth it. Nobody's worth that money unless you're Ohtani, because you bring in so much money in the international market that it's worth it. Other than that, everybody's an overpay. Everybody. The Mets are going to get somebody else that is an overpay. So, again, I rather overpay for the best player on the market. I don't want to overpay for the guy that's lesser than the guy that we should have got. That's the issue. Because everybody who didn't want to overpay for Kyle Tucker, and there's Met fans in the chat that are saying that, I'm not giving $55, $60 million to Kyle Tucker. Okay, but you're probably going to have to overpay for Cody Bellinger. You probably have to overpay for a trade for an outfielder, prospect-wise. So, again, I ask you, what do you want to do? You want to overpay for lesser players or for the best player on the market? I'd rather overpay the best player on the market. But you are negotiating, and Gio just said it, right? Just said it. If you're going to overpay what you already have for the top player on the market, just do it then. Keep going. Because you're going to overpay for lesser players. And we all know this is going to happen. We know David Stearns is going to pivot because he is a pivoter. He rarely gets his guy. Steve Cohen clearly is doing a bad job at this point because he can't even close the deal now. So you got to actually do something else and pivot, which you're going to have to. But we're not going to be happy. We might be happy with the player we get. Well, maybe. I don't know. There's probably one player I want at this point, and that's probably Jared Durant. At this point, I don't even want Cody Bellinger because you're going to overpay for Cody Bellinger. Are you going to match the Yankees offer, or are you going to go more than the Yankees offer? Isn't that an overpay? I'd be more pissed that we overpaid for Bellinger because clearly the Mets didn't want him enough. They wanted Tucker. So now what do you have to do? You have to, nervously go back into the room and open the door and say, hey, Cody, we really want you now. I mean, come on. That is what they're doing. That is exactly what they're doing. And it sucks. It's annoying because it's not just about the player. The Mets keep on losing out on guys that they were right there to get. That should be more frustrating to Met fans than just losing out on a player because I didn't want him to go $60 million or $55 million, whatever. But they lost out on another potential player that can help this team. That should be the more pissed off and angry part of Met fans right now. You could say that he wasn't worth the money, but not one Met fan was going to complain when he's wearing Mets colors on opening day. You wouldn't because you got the player. Money's irrelevant at that point. You got the player. Let's see how he performs. But you didn't get the player. How many more times are the Mets going to lose out on potential players to better the team? This is the problem. This isn't about no players. And it was front-loaded. Okay, so no deferrals from the Mets. Thank you, Chris. Let me throw that up there. As I'm not trying to look at my phone. No deferrals from the Mets offer. It was front-loaded to $60 million for the first 2 years, like the Dodgers. Okay. So it's a very similar deal. So, and there was no opt-outs, I'm guessing. If there's no opt-outs, then okay. So with no opt-outs tells me that the Mets are more concerned about their draft picks that they would give up, the compensation picks that they would give up, and weren't willing to give the opt-outs. So we talked about this on the show earlier today, right? What did I say? Don't lose the guy because of opt-outs. It was that plus a little bit more money. So if there was no opt-outs in the Mets deal, but there was deferrals, there was a front-loaded contract. Oh, man. Oh, terrible. Yeah, everybody can't wait for the Dodgers to trade for Skubal. Yeah, exactly, Chris. It was the best offer when it came to, because it wasn't deferrals. He's getting all that money up front, but it had to be the opt-outs that made Tucker sign that deal as well. I think the opt-outs matter a lot because, again, he can go back on the market at the age of 30 and be a free agent again, which, I mean, he could do that, but he ain't going to get nowhere near $55, $60 million a year looking for a long-term deal. He's probably going to get, I am curious, what was the Blue Jays offer? Because we really didn't hear a Blue Jays offer. We know they were going long-term. We know Jeff Passan said and John Heyman said that they were willing to go to 10 years. But, what are they, what was their deal? Because I'm curious because, again, everybody assumed he was going to take a long-term deal. But as I said in the show earlier, every hour that went by and he's not a Blue Jay, something is wrong with the whole idea of going to Toronto. We talked about that for an hour. We talked about why isn't he taking that long-term deal from Toronto? He was so willing not to go to Toronto that he was willing to take a 3, 4, maybe even 5 years less to go somewhere else, either to the Dodgers or the Mets, for a shorter-term high AAV deal to not go to Toronto. So, and I think the Philly fan that came on the show earlier and said, it would be great if the Blue Jays signed Tucker because that means that Bo Bichette is basically a Philly. Now that the Blue Jays lost out on Tucker, they're probably going to pivot big time to get their guy in Bo Bichette again and bring him back. And I guess that's good for the Mets because the Phillies don't get him. So right now it's a whirlwind of, oh shit, we got to pivot. It's pivot time for a lot of these teams. Blue Jays are probably going to try to get, do what they can to get Bo Bichette now because that was clearly their next target before Kyle Tucker or after Kyle Tucker. So, and I don't think the Blue Jays are in on Cody Bellinger. So it's the story of the pivot for these teams now. What are the Mets going to do? And I would appreciate it if, it's tomorrow that the Mets pivot, not in the middle of the night when I'm trying to get some damn sleep. That would be nice. I would like some sleep. That would be nice. I was just about to go to sleep when this news broke. And I'm like, God damn it. God damn you, Tucker. God damn you, LA. God damn you, West Coast, for being 3 hours earlier than us. Because it's only 9 o'clock. And obviously when he signed, it was about 8 o'clock or so, 7:30, whatever it was. So the question is now, where are the Mets going to go? All right. And James, this is a good point because this has been a topic of conversation from Mets Hot Stove, from my shows, Chris shows as well. We talked about that, and me and Chris are going to figure out when we're going to do a show together because there's a lot to talk about. I already said this, and I'm willing to do it at this point. Losing Kyle Tucker is bad. I don't think the Mets are going to go after Cody Bellinger. So maybe they try for a Jared Duran because anybody else other than Jared Duran is just a spot to fill. They're only going to fill a spot, right? Luis Robert Jr. is a placeholder. Anybody else you get is a placeholder other than Cody Bellinger. So why spend the money? Why make a trade for? I mean, you could make a trade for Jared Duran, but at this point, why not just go the prospect route, which Stearns always talks about, but always his actions say something else. Surprise, a press conference hasn't happened yet with him, but it's midnight, so he might have to go to bed. He has a bedtime. He has a curfew. So what are they going to do now? Because if they were willing to overpay for Kyle Tucker in crazy amount of money a year, will they do it with somebody else? Or because again, how many times are they trying to overpay for players that are on the market for the last couple of seasons and they lost out on them, except for Juan Soto? Because everybody else took another deal. So are the Mets going to overpay for somebody else in either prospect-wise or money-wise to land their outfielder? Or you just say, you know what? Carson Benz is going to get a very great opportunity to play center field or play in the outfield. Tyrone Taylor is going to be a center fielder. Whatever prospects are ready to go, you play them. But again, how many holes do you have, right? Jorge Polanco is probably your first baseman. For whatever it's worth, that's a little crazy to me, but whatever. It is what it is. But if you're going to play these prospects in, you're not going to bring anybody in. Like right now, unless there's outside the box thinking, and we're not thinking of an outfielder that they can get. I know some people are going to bring up Stephen Kwan. I know people are going to do that. But Stephen Kwan's not moving the needle. Let's be honest about that. Really good player, good defensively, but aren't you going to overpay for Stephen Kwan prospect-wise? Now, again, I don't care about the prospects. I worry about the player we're getting back. I don't know if Stephen Kwan's going to be good enough to make this team that much better. Now, maybe he could. I'm not going to be mad at the deal because there's willingness to get better, and I'm always on board with that. And if David Stearns sees Kwan is a guy that can help this team, go do it. I care about the guy we're getting back. I don't care about what we're giving up. I'm sick and tired of worrying about what we give up. Because ultimately, we're trying to win ball games here. But right now, this team sucks. This team's a 75-win team at best. That's obviously not good enough. So is Steve Cohen willing to pay over $300 million for a 75-win team? That's the question you got to ask. Because, again, Steve Cohen was very much involved in these negotiations. He even came back to life on X. So for anybody who doesn't believe that Steve Cohen wasn't really involved in this big time, you're nuts. He was very much involved. He tweeted out about this, about Kyle Tucker. So you know he was dead fast. He really wanted him. So yes, very much involved. But is Steve Cohen willing to pay $300+ million for a 75-win team? Because there's nobody that can convince me that this team is a good team. This rotation is absolutely garbage. Garbage. It's the same rotation that embarrassed themselves last year. You got the quitter in Kodai Senga. You got David Peterson, who just fell off the face of the earth in the second half. You got Clay Holmes coming back after throwing 170 innings for the first time in his career, because that's going to go so well. You got Nolan McLean that pitched 9 games this past season that has a ton of potential, but there's no reason to think he can take a couple of steps forward, but he definitely can take steps back. Nobody wants to talk about the possibility of him taking a step back because it's not in the Mets vocabulary. They are so scared. Met fans are so scared of Nolan McLean taking a step back that they won't even talk about it. Nobody talks about it. You know who talks about it? Myself and Chris on Mets Hot Stove. We're the only ones who talk about it. Everybody else just talks about Nolan McLean like this guy's an ace already. And you know what? He is the Mets ace. You know why? Because everybody else sucks. That's why. You can find teams that suck that have no rotation, but if you got a better pitcher than everybody else, that person's the ace. That's not a title you give because, oh, he's a great pitcher only. No, it's who's the best pitcher on your team. And it just so happens to be Nolan McLean, potentially. This rotation is garbage. There is not one guy, and I'm going to say this again. There is not one guy I bitched, moaned, and I complained again and again and again last season that this rotation is not going to be good. Who do you trust? Who? As much as you might like Nolan McLean, you cannot say you trust him yet. You can't convince me that you trust him yet. Not with only 9-10 starts. We know the potential is there. We know he has the attitude. We know he has everything to be a great pitcher. But that doesn't mean he's going to be. Let's get that in our heads, Met fans. We don't know. 9-10 starts is not going to tell you anything except he has a tremendous amount of potential. There is nobody else you trust in this rotation. Nobody. I don't even want to see Kodai Senga. I'd rather see Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong take their spots. Let the kids pitch. I don't care if they're not ready. Let them learn. Because clearly, you're not trying to get better at this point. Because you just lost out on Kyle Tucker by offering him a pretty damn good deal. A damn good deal. Why overpay for somebody who is not better than Kyle Tucker? What's the point? Because if you're going to pivot and still act like you're trying to win, you're pivoting to the next best thing. And that is where we are right now. I agree, Rick. It was Stern's fault with the pitching. Right? So what are we going to do now? We're going to get Freddie Peralta? Now, again, I don't think the offense is bad as everybody thinks. I think that if you really look at it, I don't if you can score 5 runs per game, it's more than enough to win enough ball games. More than enough. But the Mets were giving up 6.5 runs per game, 7 runs per game. You're not winning that way. So can they just worry about the pitching at this point and maybe get a placeholder like a Hayes for 1 year and have Benj or possibly Taylor play the outfield? Of course you can. You can make this pitching better, and I think you'll be okay. Because I'm saying the Mets are a 75-win team because of the pitching. If you have above average pitching in your rotation, you should be able to be in the hunt for the playoffs. But isn't this what we're talking about? We're a $300+ million payroll, and we're talking about, can we actually make the playoffs? How does that not irk you? How does that not piss you off? A tremendously high payroll in the top 3. And you're basically, for the most part, a non-playoff team. But again, if you just look at the lineup right now, Simeon and Polanco are going to be along with Soto and Lindor in the top 4. Who else steps up? Is Brett Baty going to continue to be good offensively like it was last year? That could be a number 5 hitter. What about Francisco Alvarez? Is he going to find that power that we loved when he came up? Can he be your 6th hitter? What do you do at 7, 8, and 9? Is it Carson Benz, Tyrone Taylor? That's where you got to start looking at now. Who's the DH? Is it Vientos? Are these guys going to have bounce back seasons? Are these guys going to have better seasons than they did last year? Because if they do, now we're talking about a better offense. Because 5 through 9 was an outright disaster last year. Along with the rotation being the worst I probably ever seen. It was that bad. So, what do? Do you go with the kids at the position level and you go after big targets for the pitching? And you know what? That won't be the worst thing. If you go get Valdez, if you trade for Freddie Peralta, I said this for a while. Go get a guy to be the backup plan for Nolan McLean. Having Nolan McLean himself is a huge risk. Because again, I don't think you need a tremendous offense to make the playoffs. You need a competent offense, a solid offense, but you also need the pitching to not give up 6 runs per game, which seemed to be the norm last year. And Machete, you're right. They're not getting shit. They lost out again. Let's see. Stearns is getting sunned by the Dodgers. Well, Stinger, I mean, I agree. Right? Robert Suarez got 5 years. Ranger Suarez, excuse me. Ranger Suarez got 5 years from the Red Sox. So now he is a few years younger than Valdez. But you don't think Valdez is trying to look for an extra year or two? Now, the Mets were very serious on Valdez, right? The beginning of the offseason, we knew the Mets were talking to him. And they might be still talking to him. So what do you do now? And this is when I talk about the overpay. Now you're probably going to, you're in this situation now where, all right, maybe you don't want to go get outfield help anymore. Maybe you'll get a stopgap guy for a 1-year deal. My guess is Hayes. Let's say you do pivot for potential really good to top starters now. Are you overpaying for Framber Valdez now? Because Valdez is the best guy on the market now. Free agent market. Because anybody who wants to overpay now for a Freddie Peralta, he is a rental. So we're back to the same story next year. Now you got to worry about keeping him. Can they do that? That's the other concern, right? Again, if you're going to overpay for a rental, go get Tariq Skubal. I said that for a while. It's stupid to get Peralta when you're going to overpay for him anyway, prospect-wise. Go get Tariq Skubal. I said that for a while. That's what I said. I continue to say it. I'm staying by that. Because there's more people that want Freddie Peralta thinking that it's going to cost you basically nothing than getting the best player on the trade market. So it's what you're willing to do. And again, you get Freddie Peralta, we'll be fine with that, right? Nobody's going to complain about that. But there will be people that says, oh, wow, you got to give up that to get Freddie Peralta? Yeah, because it's not going to be cheap. The Brewers aren't giving you him for nothing. I'd rather get the better player, and that's Tariq Skubal. If I'm going to get a rental, get me the best one. Don't get me the second best one, even though Freddie Peralta is perfectly fine. But if I'm going to tell you this right now, Freddie Peralta is going to cost you 3 prospects. I truly believe that. I truly believe that Peralta is going to cost you 3 prospects. Maybe 3 top 10, 3 top 15. I'm telling you that right now. If you're willing to do that, you might as well get Tariq Skubal. Excuse me. Well, explosive. Well, you still got to try, right? You can't just sit back and have a $300 million payroll and be a garbage team. Because right now, the Mets are a garbage team. With no starting pitching that's worthwhile, this team is not doing anything. But the $300 million payroll is everybody's fault. That's on them. You know, the Mets spent over $100 million so far this year on players, and it doesn't feel like they got better. That's a problem. Right? Bringing in Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, Jorge Polanco, bringing in Marcus Semien, a couple other deals. They spent $100 million this year. Nobody feels like they got better. That's crazy to me. But let's make no mistake about it. When you break up the core, and again, I'm not crying a river for the core. They've been a losing core. But when you do that, you leave yourself with holes. And you're filling them with older, lesser players. That's a fact right now. But which is funny to me that, let's go really hard after Kyle Tucker. Yet we will hear, and Stearns will talk at some point, maybe even tomorrow. He'll talk, and he'll talk about the prospects. He'll say, yes, we really tried for Kyle Tucker, but he's going to talk about prospects. And you know what? I think somebody said it. Let me see. I think it's classic. If you get Valdez and Gallen, that's not bad, right? That's fine. Again, you solidify your pitching more. This lineup isn't terrible. It should be good enough to win you ball games. Now, again, if Brett Beatty takes a step back and Alvarez has been doing what he's doing offensively, you're back to square one again. You're back to having guys at the top of the order, and you're extremely top heavy in your lineup. It's going to be the same issue. But again, the Mets lineup was bad 5-9, but their overall numbers, like they scored enough runs to win enough ball games. But again, the pitching was so bad that the offense had no hope the remaining 4 months of the season. It was that bad. Like every game, it felt like the Mets were behind 3 runs. And constantly the offense has to come back. And no offense can constantly come back and win enough ball games to do that. So can you just focus on the pitching now? Would I be against that? No. But if you, again, let's understand this, right? Let's understand the whole Valdez thing. Gallen, maybe he'll get a 1-year deal, but he might get a 2-year deal, right? 2-year deal with an opt-out. You get Valdez, and let's say you get a Gallen. Let's just say because the comment's up there. Aren't you taking away the possibility of Brandon Sproat potentially being in the rotation to start the year or a little bit later in the year? Same thing goes for Jonah Tong. Aren't you blocking them? Unless you move other players, other pitchers. But are you really going to move these other pitchers at this point? Is Senga still tradable? Is Peterson still on the market? So there's a lot to think about, not just by signing those guys. Because if you sign Valdez, you sign Gallen. They're in the rotation, obviously. But what do you do with everybody else that is not fitting in this rotation? Do you trade them, get assets back, or get what you can back? And then Brandon Sproat move up in the depth charts? Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong move up in the depth charts? So if anybody gets hurt or somebody's not pitching well and you bring them up, because all you're doing is blocking them if you don't get rid of anybody. Is Shomani going to the bullpen? Is somebody else going to go to the bullpen? That's everything you have to think about if you get those guys. Again, I'm on board. You want Valdez? You want Gallen? Let's go. It's a hell of a lot better than what the Mets had last year. It's not even close. If you tell me you have a Valdez, McLean, Gallen, Clay Holmes, that's not bad. That is not bad. For anybody who thinks that Valdez is overweight, is old, and is just going to get worse, well, he hasn't shown it. So don't tell me something he has not been. He has been a consistent 30-game-a-year starter. He pitches every 5th day. He gives you between 175 to 190 innings every year. So don't tell me he's going to break down when he hasn't yet. It's the same argument that people had with Pete Alonso, right? I didn't care about Pete Alonso's age at all. I never talked about his age. I talked about how people overhyped his 2 months of greatness most time he was a Met, except for last year. But it's the same process. Don't tell me that Valdez is going to break down when there's no signs of that. When it happens, we'll have that conversation. But it hasn't happened yet. The same thing, the same argument a lot of Met fans use with Pete Alonso, you can use with Framber Valdez. The guy consistently plays all the time. Pete Alonso plays every game. Valdez pitches every game. 30 starts consistently. 175 to 190 innings every year. Do you know what the Mets didn't do last year? They didn't get any quality enough quality starts, and they didn't get innings. You know what Framber Valdez at least does? Provides those innings. And if you don't think that can help a team, it helps your bullpen. No matter what. Even if he does pitch like he did last year, he wasn't great. But let's say he pitches to a 3.6, 3.7 ERA. But he's giving you 6 innings every single time out, at least. That's 100% better than what you got with 95% of your rotation. So that is automatically better. And he might be good. He might be damn good. We don't know. But Valdez, last year, 30 plus starts. What did he do? 187 innings? Pitched every game. Every time he needed him, he was on the mound. You don't want that? Because none of these guys can provide it that we have right now. You know, we also got to understand when it comes to Nolan McLean, does he have an innings limit? Right? Right? Is there a limit for Nolan McLean? Because again, we talked about this last year. We talk about this all the time. I talk about it all the time. Me and Chris has conversations about it. Nolan McLean cannot be your ace, and you're going to limit his innings. That does not compare unless you sign nobody and you play all the prospects and say it's a rebuild year. Then all bets are off. But clearly, again, the Mets aren't trying to use all these prospects that they have because they try to sign Kyle Tucker. They're probably going to pivot to another outfielder. Maybe they will pivot to top pitching on the market. Right? So, Nolan McLean right now, does he have any innings limit? Because if he does, I'm not going to consider him an ace. Because when you need him the most, are the Mets going to push him those extra innings? Which they will need, especially if this is the rotation that we're dealing with. So that is where we are at Friday on midnight. While Kyle Tucker graciously said, I'll do some West Coast time. As it was around 8:30, 9 o'clock when he signed, around 8 o'clock or so, West Coast time. Alan, it's not a bad point. It's not a bad point, right? I've always said this, and I'm going to stick by this until David Stearns shows me something else. David Stearns lets other teams dictate the market. He never dictates the market on the best players. He doesn't. If it falls back in his hands, everybody's going to call him a genius. But that is not how you get players, good players. You got to be aggressive at times. And maybe if they offered this short-term deal way before anybody else, maybe Tucker would have been like, screw it. I'm taking that $50 million. But guess what? You let the market make other teams dictate the market, and now you enter when everybody else started to enter that are favorable destinations other than yours. You got to be aggressive at times. You're going to tell me a month ago when you were, kissing Bellinger's ass, you didn't want Tucker? Now you want Tucker? You see the point here? The point is, what the hell is the plan? The plan seemed to be Cody Bellinger. Never seemed to be Kyle Tucker. All of a sudden, oh my God, we're desperately in the mix for Kyle Tucker. So if you were always willing to go after Tucker, why didn't you do it sooner? Why'd you wait until the market dictated it to do so? You could have been ahead of the curve. But God forbid David Stearns ever does that for a legit player. James, I already brought up Bader. Again, Bader's a stopgap. Ain't going to make a difference. Ain't going to move the needle on this team. It's not at all. King, haven't I been saying that for a while? I truly believe that. I don't think David Stearns had a thought about Kyle Tucker. I truly think Steve Cohen was getting pissed off with this offseason. And he came in late with Kyle Tucker. Maybe he thought that Kyle Tucker thing was never going to happen. And it happened to come up. Again, letting the market dictate that now you're involved. That is a loser mentality. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It's a loser mentality. Even if you have a glimpse in your mind that you want Kyle Tucker, you go after him as early as possible, because you know what? He might like your deal enough where he takes it. You know, why do it with Devin Williams? You did it with Devin Williams. Why don't you do it for a better player? This is why I don't understand the logic and the plan. Because no Method could come on right now and say, oh, yeah, he got a plan. What plan? He was kissing Cody Bellinger's ass for a month and a half. We never heard Kyle Tucker's name. And all of a sudden, they're in on Kyle Tucker. So if you wanted Kyle Tucker, the same way you were, courting Cody Bellinger, you should have been doing it for Kyle Tucker. Maybe you would have got more of a rapport with him. Maybe he would have got more comfortable with the Mets by getting to him early and seeing that the Mets wanted him earlier than any other team. No, because David Stearns don't do it. He doesn't dictate the market. He lets the market dictate him being involved. That's a fucking loser mentality. That is a small market mentality. And this is why you continue to lose out on players. If you don't believe that, you're not paying attention to the major problem. When it got serious, Steve Cohen came up and tried to fix the bullshit that David Stearns allowed to happen. David Stearns did not dictate Kyle Tucker's market. It came to him. And now you're behind the eight ball. Now you have to overpay because now the market dictated that you have to on a short-term deal. Don't think that's a problem. And I'm glad King brought that up. That is a great point by King when I posted that comment. But Machete, it wasn't that they were trying to be cheap. They were willing to give $50 million to Kyle Tucker. Their offer was legit. It's not like they didn't offer him anything or they offered him a one-year deal with $50 million. They were they were the runner-up on this contract with Kyle Tucker below the Dodgers. That's the problem. When you let the market dictate what you are willing to do, because this is what David Stearns always does. So for anybody who wants to say, oh, David Stearns is a genius, David Stearns is this, stop killing David Stearns. He allows this to happen. So they were willing to give a big old bonus for him to sign. Well, right? This is what David Stearns does. He doesn't be aggressive enough to dictate the market. For whatever reason, he doesn't like to do it. But that is a loser mentality, and that is a small market mentality. That's what small market teams do. You can't, come up late in the game and then start offering contracts when you haven't spoke to the guy this whole time. When did they start speaking to Kyle Tucker? A week and a half ago? When Toronto was clearly talking to him for a while? And the Dodgers always linger? This is the issue. When you allow the market to dictate what you are going to do, regardless of the plan, because, again, can anybody explain this plan to me again? Last week it was the prospects. This week it's Kyle Tucker. What is it next? What is it this week? What is it today on Friday? What is it going to be? Prospects today? There is no direct plan. I'm sorry. What plan is it? Can anybody explain to me the plan? We're here on January 16th, a month before pitchers and catchers, and not one person can tell me a plan. Oh, David, everybody, you see it all the time on X. Oh, why is everybody killing David Stearns? He has a plan. Yeah, what is it? One day he's going after Cody Bellinger. All of a sudden, it goes dead silence. A week later, now they're in on Kyle Tucker. What? So you were willing to go to Kyle Tucker. You were willing to pay this to Kyle Tucker, but maybe if you got in earlier and courted Tucker like you did Cody Bellinger, maybe he would have been a Met. Maybe he liked the deal you give. He liked the way that you were aggressive, and would have been there. Great. Stinger, everybody knows my plan. I want the best players. I want to go out there and get proven talent. I've said that for a while. So my plan has been the same and has not changed. David Stearns has changed 3 times this offseason. In the beginning, when he spoke about the offseason, and they asked him, are you going to be on the high-end pitcher market or the high-end alpha market? He said yes. Great. That means you should get one of those guys or multiple guys. Right now, he got none. Now, right after a couple of weeks later, when Alonso was gone, Diaz was gone, Nimmo was gone, what did he say? Well, we got these prospects we believe in that are going to fill holes. Great. Okay. That sounds like a plan. Not too long after that, they're in on Cody Bellinger. They were very much in on Cody Bellinger. And a couple weeks after that, now they're in on Kyle Tucker. So 4 times, 3 times. Let's go with 3 times. He's changed his tune 3 times already. So what are we doing here, guys? My plan is, okay, you already got a $300 million payroll. Do you really want to be a 75-win team? I would love to ask Cohen this. You are a 75-win team with over a $300 million payroll. Congratulations. Nobody will be at the ballpark. Right? The fact that this is the case, again, my plan has always been go get the proven talent. You are a big market team. You got a tremendous amount of money. Don't be on Kyle Tucker late while you allow this to happen. You should have been in on him earlier. Can anybody answer me this? Why weren't they in on Kyle Tucker a month ago when they were, all over Cody Bellinger? When clearly Kyle Tucker was willing to take a shorter term deal that Cody Bellinger was willing to take. So David Stearns didn't do his due diligence to know that Kyle Tucker was willing to take a short-term deal. He waited until the market dictated it, and then he got involved. And there's a pretty good chance when you get in late, you end up losing out, and the Mets lost out on Kyle Tucker. So I ask you again, what is David Stearns' plan? Right? Because a lot of people on X say, oh, he got a plan. Great. What is it? There is not one story he's stuck to this offseason yet. High-end market outfield and pitching? Okay, well, a couple of weeks later, he talked about the prospects filling those holes. Now, he was all in on Kyle Tucker, along with Steve Cohen. James, would I be happy with Eugenio Suarez and trading for a Duran? Sign Bassett? That's not going to help your rotation enough. Would I be happy with the offense? Yeah, I mean, Suarez can hit 35 or 40 home runs. Duran is a damn good player. Yeah, I think it would make the lineup better. But again, can this lineup score 7 runs a game? Because the pitching ain't going to do enough. The pitcher's going to be horrible. Yeah, plan by committee. Every day, the plan changes. That's the problem, Ray. Again, go on other channels. Ask those content creators What's the plan of the New York Mets? They'll give you their own. But nobody can say what the plan is for this offseason. Nobody can tell you what Stearns' plan is. Because his plan is all over the place. If he's really going to use these prospects, then Kyle Tucker made no sense. Because all you're doing is blocking Jet Williams and Ryan Clifford. And even if the Mets get a Duran, you're blocking an outfield spot for one of those guys. Along with Carson Bench, which still has an opportunity to fill a hole. But you are blocking other guys that are outfielders. So, again, guys, if you're tuning in and you've been here a while, the rich get richer. The Los Angeles Dodgers signed Kyle Tucker, 4 years, $240 million. Deferrals, opt-outs after the second and third year. The Mets lose out on Kyle Tucker. Now, where do they pivot? Where do they pivot? Again, it's another wait-and-see approach for Met fans. The Mets lose out on another potential player that could have helped this team. Every day, they're losing players by the minute. What are they going to do? If they're going to pivot, who are they going to pivot to? That is the question for today. The Jays are out on Bichette. That's interesting. I wonder what they're going to do now. So great. Look, the Phillies are going to sign Bo Bichette, and that team gets much better. And the Mets just, are in status quo. Oh, CP, 2028 payroll, man. I can't wait to talk about it in 2026. Wonderful. Wonderful. So, let's ask yourself, my fans, before we call it a night. And thank you all for tuning in. What is the Mets' plan? Who are they going to pivot? Who is the players they're going to pivot to? And are we going to continue to be disappointed? Because I can't wait to go on X and look at the nonsense people are going to talk about with David Stearns. I didn't want Kyle Tucker for $50 million. He's not that good. Yeah, they'll be the first ones to buy their jersey. Right? Typical. So, those three things. Where are the Mets going to pivot? Are the Mets seriously still going off their top talent? Because, again, if you are, that plan is changed from a month ago with the prospects filling those holes. And are we going to be disappointed yet again? So with that said, have a good night. The Dodgers get even better, if that's even possible. Apparently it is. And we wait for another day of the David Stearns plan that's not a plan. Have a good night, guys. Let's go, Mets. And I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets